Record.
Hi there. This is our second session of our Lent reflections, and I'll share my screen. So we're following The Garden of the Beloved by Robert Way, and this is our second session. During our time together this evening, we will cover 2 chapters, followed by a quiet time to reflect on what the words mean to us, and then to have time to discuss the messages. I will put some of the words on the screen from the chapters. This book is based on an image of a garden with the master gardener called the lover and a young man who becomes a disciple. God is referred to as the beloved. The readings are quite short, so the session will not be long. As we take a break from the busyness of life, let us pause a moment. So this chapter is the disciple and the caterpillars. So it was that the disciple passed his days working in the garden of the beloved and listening to the instruction of the lover. Now the garden was full of birds with beautiful plumage, which sang continually the praise of the beloved, and of brightly coloured butterflies, which played about the flowers, so that the bushes seemed to blaze with a splendour not of their own. One day, as the disciple was passing through the garden, he noticed that the leaves of certain plants were ragged and full of holes. Then, looking more clearly, he saw there were on them many small caterpillars, dung-coloured and covered with hideous hairs, which even as he looked were eating the leaves of the plants. When he saw this, it seemed to him that they were doing great harm to the garden of the beloved. So he plucked them one by one from the plants and crushed them beneath his heel. At that moment, the lover came to the garden, and when he saw what the disciple was doing, he wept. Yet he spoke gently to the disciple and said, "I know that you have acted through ignorance and with a good heart in doing this. Yet in doing it, you have greatly hurt the beauty of the garden of the beloved." The disciple, when he heard this, was amazed and very sorrowful. The lover showed the disciple another plant, where he saw caterpillars enveloping themselves in cocoons of silk. There were many cocoons on the stems of the leaves, and even as he watched, one split from it and became a butterfly with wings like the rainbow. Then he perceived how in his ignorance he had heard the garden of the beloved. We'll have a few moments for private reflection. And if it would be helpful, feel free to jot down some notes for our reflection at the end of the session. We'll move on to a new chapter. This chapter is the disciple and the worms. One day, the lover took the disciple and told him to dig up a patch of waste ground. When the lover told him to do this, the disciple was very glad, for usually the lover kept to himself all such hard tasks, and therefore he dug zealously and deep. As he dug, he turned up many loathsome worms, slimy and obscene. These, since his heart had grown more gentle than when he first entered the garden, he collected carefully together in a sack. Although he much disliked touching them and carrying them to the edge of the garden, he put them beyond its bounds, for it seemed to him intolerable that any such hideous things should deface the glory of the garden of the beloved. So when the time came for planting, in the garden they sowed seed throughout where they had dug it. And in due season, lovely flowers and green herbs sprung up everywhere. Save only the plot which the disciple had dug. This remained bare and barren. When the disciple saw this, he was very sad, and going to the lover, asked him, saying, "Sir, tell me, I pray you, is it my sins that have rendered the plot which I dug barren and yielding no fruit or beauty to the beloved?" The lover answered, "Tell me carefully all that you did when you dug this plot." To which the disciple replied, "I put my spade deep into the earth, for I was glad of hard toil in the service of the beloved. Then I turned over the earth with my spade, and in it were many loathsome worms. These, much as I disliked touching them, I placed in a sack and carried outside the boundary of the garden, for I desired to move such ugliness from the garden of the beloved." Then said the lover, "These creatures which seem to you so loathsome are fellow workers with us in the service of the beloved. For burrowing in the earth, they allow air to get to the roots of the plants, and they swallow and digest the earth so that the plants can draw nourishment from it, and without their help, no plant can grow. So you see, indeed, these creatures which seem to us so loathsome are in truth more profitable servant to the beloved than we are ourselves. The disciple then asked, how can I repair this great damage which my ignorance I have done to the garden? The lover replied, go out of the garden to the place where you put the worms, and dig there, so that you may find these or other worms, which you can bring back to the plot to work for the glory of the garden of the beloved. The disciple went out of the garden, though he much disliked leaving it even for such a short time, and dug and took up the worms, and lifting them very lovingly and with great reverence, brought them to the barren plot, which thereafter was barren no more. We'll have a few minutes for private reflection. Please feel free to unmute, and we can reflect on both chapters. And here's a starter. We all work together. I think what I like about these chapters is it's the unseen that makes all the difference.
I like it because somebody somewhere thinks that the caterpillars and the worms are ugly. I don't, but there are people like the chap in the book who thinks that because they're ugly, number one, they'll stay that way forever. So they shouldn't be in the garden because it's only beautiful things in the garden. And number two, ugly things can't do any good. Well, for me, there's two opposites there, because he thinks the caterpillars are ugly and he gets rid of them because he can only see that they're ugly, can't see into the future with any chance of ugly becoming beautiful. And don't forget, it's all in his eyes. Whereas number two is the opposite for me. He sees ugly, nothing to do with, oh, it'll change and be beautiful. Nothing. He doesn't think that. But he now thinks that ugly is useless.
I like that. Yes.
So for me, what the book is saying is you might see something as ugly and it will always be ugly. Actually, that's not the way God sees things at all. And your definition of ugly, for me, is definitely not God's definition of ugly. And number two, we presume to think that ugly equals useless. Whereas the disciple might think that he's beautiful, therefore he's allowed to be in the garden because he's not ugly. But in fact, the book says that the lover says the ugly, what word did he use? Not obscene. Anyway, whatever. does better work in the world than we do. Loathsome.
Loathsome, yes.
Loathsome.
Yeah.
Well, ugly and loathsome are really strong words. And I do think, because it's an allegory, I do think that sometimes we see things, people even, we decide they're ugly, we decide they're useless. Where in fact, if they're ugly now, they're on a journey and may become beautiful. And even if they're ugly and they stay ugly, they do a phenomenal and much needed, essential job in this world. So I do love this one because I love the caterpillar to the butterfly story. But it is true, if you get rid of the worms, nothing will grow because there's no air. It's just solid soil. Nothing can grow.
Absolutely. And the sentence you were talking about, the lover, the gardener, is talking. So you see, indeed, these creatures which seem to us loathsome are in truth more profitable servants to the beloved than we are ourselves. And I think it's judging.
Yes.
From a human perspective, because obviously the disciple hadn't got a clue where butterflies came from.
Yeah. Yeah,
Didn't
agreed.
realise the connection.
Yeah.
And also didn't realise the benefit of the worms, which are so needed in the gardens. And my little starter sentence, we all work together. And that is that's what came to me when I was putting this together. It's that we do work together, and we have to work together to support each other for everything to work.
Agreed. And don't forget the story that Jesus tells of the wheat and the tares.
Yes.
They are growing in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
So if we were to judge, that's a good thing, this is a bad thing for people, how do you know actually that you've got the right way round? So you could root up a piece of wheat, which will give the tares more room to grow. Yes. Well, that's really bad.
Yeah.
I do think judging people is it's destructive, June. I think it's an awful, I know everybody can quote it. Jesus said, don't judge and you won't be judged. Well, that's only on earth. Don't judge. Okay, I won't, because I don't want to be judged by people. That's okay. But that doesn't work for heaven, because we will be judged by God. We know that. So don't be judged, is I don't want to be judged for the way I run my life by another human being. I don't mind somebody saying, that's okay, good job, well done. And I don't mind somebody saying, can I suggest you might have done that a bit better? Or can I suggest a different way? I don't mind that at all. What I do mind is, don't do it that way, do it my way.
Yes.
What you're saying is wrong, this is right. Because for me, that's really judgmental. And I accept judgment by God. I accept help from people. But I don't think somebody should judge me because I only wear skirts and don't possess a pair of trousers, or I eat my food in a certain order. I really don't think people should judge.
No.
Because I can't see the usefulness for the kingdom.
No.
Can't see the usefulness. So why would you do it? Why waste your breath? Can't get it. Whatever.
I like it.
I love that we all work together a bit.
Yeah.
There's so much biblical behind it, isn't there, June? The bit about, you know, is it Corinthians, where Corinthians 11 number 1, he talks all about we are the body, and you're a bit of this, and you're a head, or you're a toe, or whatever it is, all that stuff, you know. I don't want to be this, I want to be a leg, or I want to be an eye. It is true, you know what I mean? You've got like a monster, haven't you? You've got like a worse than Frankenstein monster. If everybody's an eye or everybody's a leg,
Yeah.
working together means appreciating people who do things differently to us.
And,
Because thank God for them.
agreeing that we've all got strengths and we've got our
Yeah,
own strengths.
definitely, definitely. I remember being told donkeys years ago, staff your weaknesses. You know, don't staff your strength. You can do that. Staff your weaknesses. Well, that's really good, because you're recognizing that somebody does something better than you. So having somebody who can do something better than you is not an issue or a problem. It's a gift. It's a strength.
Yes, it is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the point if you can all do the same thing and nobody can do the other thing?
Absolutely. You can't have,
Oh.
you can't have all the chefs in the kitchen that can only cook the meat.
Yeah,
You need
exactly.
people to cook the vegetables. We need people to peel the
Yeah.
vegetables.
Yes, you're right, June. You're right. I love this book. It's so very, very deep. Every time I read it, I seem to peel off another layer, which
And
is
you've
why I
only,
do think the book is anointed, June. I
I
do
think
think
it's,
the writer was anointed when he wrote it.
yeah.
I really do.
And I also think it's the right book in the lead up to Easter.
I'd have never thought of it in that way, but for definite it is,
Mm.
because I think it bears my soul. And for me, that's what happened to Jesus during Lent.
Mm.
He had his whole soul out there for somebody to pick at and try to destroy. And he got through it. And I do think this book is one of those that deepens your faith.
Yeah.
Exponentially, really. It's not just, well, that's nice to think about. For me, the value of this book is it tears everything back and asks you the deepest basic question. Are you judgmental?
Mm.
Are you?
Especially in these 2 chapters today.
This is marvelous.
Just,
yeah.
We all work together, and you can't judge.
No.
You can't judge because, you know, I mean, I have got a special thing about butterflies anyway. I just
me
have.
too.
And I think because they don't just change, they actually melt. It's like they melt in the chrysalis, in the cocoon, and they become a different creature.
All together.
And it also reminds me of water bugs and dragonflies.
Yes, exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same.
Let's move on. So, time for prayer. Father, I thank you for Jane and Jill joining for our session this evening. As we look at this beautiful book and consider what's being said. I thank you for the stories and the lessons regarding the caterpillars and regarding the worms. And I thank you that we're taught not to judge, and we do work hard as humans not to judge. And we learn to accept everybody's offering, everybody's work, everybody's journey and working for the kingdom. And some people are caterpillars and some people are worms, and we all pull together for the glory. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Amen, June.
Jane's put a lovely comment, and she put, when she first glanced through this book, she thought it was a bit too airy-fairy,
She told me that.
but sitting and reading it slowly with you, it's making more sense. Oh, bless you, Jane. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, a little thought dropped into my mind, June. I might try and add a little bit of this book from the chapters that we've done into my preach on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's prize giving, so I'm going to use a little bit of it, I think, and it may just spark somebody's interest. But June, I'm going to tell you a really bad secret. If nobody else had joined in on these Zooms, I didn't care.
I know. I didn't. I'd have done it anyway.
Absolutely. Last week was thrillingly lovely for me. Absolutely good for my soul. And tonight has been the same. So if nobody else had joined in, it would have been no less a blessing for me. With Jane, it's an extra blessing. But if nobody else joins, and if Jane don't come next week for whatever reason, it's still a lovely blessing, June. So I mean it. God bless you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you both for joining me. And I look forward to spending time with you at the next session, which is tomorrow.
It is.
Stop sharing. So thank you, and I shall catch up with you tomorrow, my lovelies.
Lovely. See you tomorrow, June.
God bless.
Take care. God bless. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye now.